But the Brisbane Broncos this year, their gains for the season: Bayliss, Capewell, DeLuise Huita, Ryan James from the Raiders, Jensen, Brenko Lee, Pereira, Reynolds, and Billy Walters. They've lost not a lot of consequence. Asiata, Coates, Bullymore, you might argue. Copley, Brody Croft's gone over to Salford. How do you go this weekend, Ollie?
Don't think he's played yet. They've only had the one game so far.
Dearden's gone. Alex Glenn retired. Levi, Matt Lodge, Milford, Pango Jr., Tass, and, Reece Walsh is already gone by this stage. How are we going to kick this off? We might just go around a table and start with some opinions. Barn, what were you thinking? We have all our planning on air, so that's good.
Absolutely. Well, I think they're probably in a better position than what they were this time last year with the trade after the trade period. There's a bit of dead wood in those losses that you mentioned that probably didn't really deserve a spot in first grade to begin with. I think you might have missed Tavita Pangai Jr. there as well. He's probably one of their bigger losses with Bullymore. But, I think they're actually in a better position than what they were. T. Marie Martin's also come back into the squad, so where he fits in there will be interesting. But I believe they're going to be a lot more consistent this year than what they were last year. And they'll provide a pretty decent competition for most sides, except for maybe the top handful of teams. Impressed. Adam Reynolds is the biggest pickup, I think, pretty much of the entire league, to be honest. He's going to bring them that structured half that they need. They've got some experienced representative players in Capewell and Reynolds, and I think they'll improve up the ladder. The questions I have is who plays 5'8", and obviously how the younger fellas in that squad progress. There's some talented youngsters in the team, but it's they're going to need to put it on the field and see how they go there. So I've got them finishing. If everything goes right with this team, they could finish in the top 8 and finish somewhere between 5th and 8th. But I've got them just missing the 8. I'm going to have them finishing 9th.
So an exercise I did today, for better or worse, I ran out of time for the last couple, but I'll make it up as I go, is sort of try and put together their best 1 to 17, which I might run through quickly before we get to you, Gumpy. Looking at this from down the page, it was looking at something like Tessie New, Pereira, Staggs, Farnsworth, Cobbo. I had Gamble there, but there's a big rap on Ezra Mam.
Yep.
Reynolds, halfback and captain, Haas, Turpin, Kennedy, or Flegler will be back soon, but Kennedy or Flegler, Ricky, Capewell, and then Pat Carrigan back, Walters, Flegler, and all the other prop on the bench, Piacora and Hetherington. Sounds pretty close to the mark.
Absolutely, it does.
Yeah, I think so.
Gumpy, what do you make of Brisbane's chances?
Look, I've got them 11th, 12th around there. I've still got concerns, and I'll probably sound like a broken record with the teams that I don't have at the top. I've questioned around their spine again. Reynolds is there, but Turpin, he's okay. Tessie New, he's sort of unproven. I'd probably play Staggs at 6 to start the season. He'd get his hands on the ball a little bit more.
Given Brenko Lee's there as well, that you can have a first-grade centre.
I think that in the modern game now, the centres just aren't touching the ball that much. It goes to the back row or out the back to the fullback, and centres aren't getting a lot of the ball. So maybe with Reynolds there, you have Staggs as a running 5'8" and make him into a bit of a Jack White and kind of a 6, be similar kind of a player. So I'd probably play Staggs at 6 if I was them and strengthen the spine a little bit. But that would be my concern. But I agree with Barney. I think they'll put in a bit more. Some games last year, I don't think they tried. I don't think if there was any effort. I think that if there's effort there, I think that they're a team that can improve. But I can't see them making the 8. I think there's definitely 8 better teams than them. But, Payne, Haas and Reynolds will get them a long way.
Well, with Brisbane, there are actually big signs of improvement towards the end of 2021, I thought, as well. They won 3 out of their last 6, and in the 3 games they lost, they didn't lose by more than 8 points. So there was a sort of an uplift there towards the end of the season. At least the squad they had was at least putting in that bit more effort as well. Payne Haas is obviously the star of the show. I don't think I've ever seen him necessarily have a bad game. He'll probably remain pretty consistent. The big thing is for me, though, is Adam Reynolds, because that's the main thing Brisbane have missed, a game-controlling half that they have not had since Ben Hunt. You know, for all the criticism we have for Ben Hunt, you look at his time at Brisbane since then, they've not been able to replicate him in any way. Well, I think now they finally actually exceeded him, and arguably, at least for the past decade, in terms of consistency, consistently one of, if not the best, game-controlling half in the NRL, I guess that's still going around today, would have to be Adam Reynolds. So you can't do much better than that if you're talking about that prolonged period. And that's actually done a lot for me, at least in terms of where I got Brisbane on the ladder. I'd have to respectfully disagree with Gump here. I've actually got them just sliding into the top 8. I think there are some teams that were sort of around there last year who have dropped off a bit, and I think Brisbane could capitalise on that, and I've got them finishing 8th, I think, at the moment, exactly.
I'm leaning more to you, Ollie. I think there was a good 12 weeks of last year where Brisbane were up to their ears in a lot of games and just couldn't ice it. I think Reynolds coming in gives them that little bit of leadership and obviously takes away from leadership from other clubs. But I absolutely agree with what you said, Gump, and my biggest thing I wrote down was, what is their spine? I don't know who their 6 is yet. There was an article the other day saying Billy Walters is in the running. Honestly,
Well, and that's the problem. I don't know that Kevin Walters knew last year.
He didn't.
And I don't know
38 combos.
I don't know that he knows this year, and I think that maybe he does know, and they're training with those guys they obviously are, for a pre-season, but I don't, looking at their list, I don't know that there's a standout
An out-and-out
thing.
6.
And it's the same as when we talk about the teams that will be around about Broncos on the ladder, we'll be saying the same things about them.
Well, for me, I think it's got to be Tyson Gamble, at least to start the year. He showed a little bit of ability in terms of controlling the ball a little bit, which obviously he won't need to do necessarily at 5'8", but he just showed that little bit more for me. At Brisbane was sort of the one who by the end of the year was consistently in the side. I think at least, we obviously don't see training, right, but from what we saw last year, I think he's the one that's probably earned that spot next to Reynolds. You could argue that Albert Kelly, I'm bringing him up again, but he's someone who could actually maybe complement Reynolds that bit more, just because he's probably more that quintessential 5'8", I would say, with that bit of X factor about him. But I think it's either got to be, at least to start the year, Gamble or Kelly, and I think I'd lean a bit more towards Tyson Gamble. But I think eventually they've just re-signed him on, I think, a long-term deal. Eventually it's going to be Ezra Mam who's going to be the long-term 5'8". You brought up Katoni Staggs. I think due to his injury toll the past couple of years, and I think try to ease him back into centre first, don't fix what's broke, especially when he is coming back from injury. I think if you just chuck him into 5'8" at first, you might not get that form you thought you were going to get in the position. Maybe down the track towards the end of the season, mate, if he's having a consistent year. I just don't think straight away put him into 5'8".
Well, they probably should put Ezra Mam in there then. Because, teams like the Broncos and the Bulldogs and the Tigers, if you've got a kid, put him in. You've tried the other guys. It didn't work.
And let's be serious.
They've tried other guys.
Billy Walters is exposed enough. He's not going to be a premiership winning 5'8".
Put the kid in. And see how he goes.
Hey, do you know much about him?
You've not a lot.
I think he's a big body and
a very talented player. But put him in. They've tried other blokes. They haven't worked.
And you know what? For a young bloke coming in with all this hype around him, who's very young, apparently got the talent, you can't think of too many better blokes to put him beside than Adam Reynolds, could you? Because the pressure's just going to be 100% off.
Absolutely, and you can just tell him basically you either just shovel it along the line or you run. And if he's only got those two jobs to do,
well, you blood him under Reynolds. Reynolds might only have 2 years.
Yeah.
So why wait 2 years till Reynolds is gone? They may sign somebody by then, but they might not. So blood him while Reynolds is there.
If Reynolds isn't already mentoring him, I'd say to Kevin Walters, "What are you doing?" Because he got I dare say he's been doing less. He's been training him.
Well, all the noise before the Billy Walter article that you've mentioned was Ezra Mam was going to be starting round 1. So it'd be interesting to see what actually happens.
So final say, the other one I want to mention actually very quickly in terms of leadership, Capewell is a fantastic player. He doesn't. When we look, we tend to, I think all of us are a bit guilty of looking through games as through Supercoach spectrum sometimes. Doesn't necessarily rack up those sort of stats, but does great stuff. Back row with footwork, can play centre, which they don't necessarily need, and gives you a premiership winning back row leadership role. And they're getting Carrigan back, who missed a whole year, who was sensational 2 years back, outstanding as a leader. He's still only 24, I think.
Yeah, if you've got two back rowers, play them in the centres.
Yeah, well, why not?
Your best 17, you put them in, or your best 13 to start. If you've got two damaging back rowers that are going good, like Ricky and Piakura, if they turn out to be the players they think, then play Capewell in the centres.
And that gives you the option to move Staggs to 6. You still have Herbie as a centre. You've still got Branko Lee as a centre.
I'd like to see Capewell next to Staggs, to be honest. Both with a bit of footwork, running different angles. Whoever gets the lead ball, the other one's trailing in behind.
It's dangerous.
That could
side
be
of
a
the
dangerous
field.
combination.
Very dangerous.
And you throw Selwyn Cobbo outside him, and could be very dangerous. Yeah. And Pereira's an underrated finisher too, actually.
Absolutely.
I also really like the signing of Ryan James, not necessarily for what he brings on the field, but for a few years now, the only real sort of negative thing I've had to say about Brisbane's forward pack is that they're all just really young, and you sort of need that older head there just to sort of guide them a little bit, because when your Thaidays, etc., Matt Gillett's all that retired, there was Alex Glenn, but he was pretty much the only one that was there who could have possibly, given advice, mentored a Payne Haas, for example. Not that he needs a whole lot of mentoring, but just sort of steer his head straight like the rest of them. I guess now you've got that sort of body who Payne Haas doesn't need to be mentored anymore or anything, but just to sort of have that older head in the group. And I mean, you could chuck Capewell in there, and also Corey Jensen, who's been around for a fair bit as well. Just sort of those older guys with that bit more NRL experience. Not to say that they're more or less talented than these younger blokes, but just that experience, I think that'll help the younger guys as they come through.
Absolutely, and they've got plenty of young forwards in that squad. So
yeah, there's some we haven't talked about. And even someone like your Hetheringtons, we mentioned Piakura, who's out to round 3. Rabadi, all did good stuff. As I've said, I'm optimistic, I think we all agree they're going to be borderline 8, and if they play well enough, they'll poke their head in there.